All right. Hello, everyone. You are listening to the Minding Mind podcast, where we live life with ease, connection, and permission to just be. I'm your host, Evelyn LeVasseur, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I am sitting down with Stacy Rocklein, and we are going to talk about forgiveness and maybe even a little bit of loneliness. At this point in time in the world, in our lives, I can't imagine that I know one single human being that has not felt a struggle with forgiving, especially when they feel that the person they're trying to forgive is not sorry, or maybe the forgiveness needs to be for themselves. And I also don't know anybody who hasn't felt lonely, isolated, or even lonely in a room full of people. So I feel like this is something we all relate to. And Stacey, I'm really excited to get into this conversation. Before we do that, let me introduce Stacey to you all. Stacey is a coach, speaker, author, and content creator on a mission to eradicate loneliness. What a beautiful thought. She helps people build, sustain, repair, and nourish their relationships, including the one with themselves. Her most popular online course, the 21-day Heart Cleanse, has been taken by hundreds of students and has become her most highly requested program, which everyone can now access in her new book, Forgive Without an Apology. Stacey, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm excited.
Me too. Okay, let's just go. How did you get into this work of forgiveness and wanting to eradicate loneliness? Because that is a high calling.
Yes. First was the forgiveness piece. I came to a point in my life where I felt that I needed to look back at the things that had happened to me. And as a person who had always looked forward, I didn't really think I needed to forgive anything. I was just like, things happen and people are imperfect. And it wasn't actually that I was being forgiving. It was that I was not looking closely at what happened. I wasn't acknowledging my feelings. I was just skipping over the top of them and moving forward. So those are pockets of pain that not only am I holding in my nervous system, but also are creating limiting beliefs that are affecting me everywhere. But I didn't realize that until very late in the game. And then realized I just want to look back and do some processing. And as I went through and processed I don't have a very dramatic story. I'm the oldest of five. My parents struggled to some degree, so we were in survival mode a lot. And it was many things that on paper looked inconsequential, like a difficult family move across states at a impressionable time, things like that, that I thought were just small parts of my story, but they were significant moments. And once I started digging into those experiences, I realized that it's really all about forgiveness. It all comes down to being able to, and the way I define forgiveness is to be able to let go of the experience without needing an apology or closure or amends or whatever from the other person. And also being able to let go of the defense mechanisms that experience created that we now use and the limiting beliefs that it created that we're stuck by and stopped by. So it's all forgiveness at the end of the day. And the one thing that was surprising to me, and I guess it shouldn't have been, was I thought I was going to get in and process things, and these were going to be things that had happened to me. And I had a lot of self-forgiveness to do. I had hurt myself in so many experiences with my own behaviors, and that was a really important part of my healing process also. And what had inspired it really was a feeling of deep loneliness. Tons of friends, great social group, family, a wonderful marriage, but I didn't feel like anyone really knew me because I was holding back. With that was just one of my defense mechanisms. I didn't know how to be vulnerable.
Let's go back a little bit for the person who hears what you're saying and feels like this is great conceptually, but what does that look like in real time? What does it look like to recognize a defense mechanism? And what does processing look like for you?
Okay. Defense mechanism, I consider anything that we have in place that's obvious or not to us that is keeping people out. It's keeping us safe. And for that reason, they're very important. And I wouldn't say get rid of your defense mechanisms because you can be in an unsafe situation and you need them, but they are blocking you from certain things. And what happened to me is I had a new baby coaching business and it was failing. And I recognized that it was failing and I wanted to talk about it with people because it was really affecting me. And I brought it up to a friend and she like couldn't hear me say that I was failing. I didn't need anyone to fix it. I just wanted to report my feelings and have them held in a space with another person. And she showed a lot of, which is our friends come and they try to problem solve with us and they try to give us solutions and or get angry at that person or whatever. But I just really needed someone to hear me. And so I was like, okay, maybe it's the not the person. And then I brought it up to my husband, and he too just couldn't stay in that space with me for me to feel my feelings. And I realized that I had created a defense mechanism that that had organized all of my relationships so that people didn't even know that I needed that. Like they had no idea. I'd never asked for anybody to just stay in an emotional space with me. And that felt deeply lonely. That just, go ahead.
Sorry, what made you recognize that it was you that created those circumstances for yourself?
That's a good question. Because it felt like as I was in those moments and feeling invisible, as I'm reporting, I'm really feeling like a failure here. What was coming back to me felt familiar. And so, as the other person is trying to problem solve or just, oh, you'll figure it out, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. I'm like, that's me. I have always said I'll figure it out. I have created that relationship with that person. And as I looked around at all of once I had done it with two people, I just did a survey. And with every single person in my life, I had created a persona and they are reacting to my persona of being strong, being able to handle anything, being able to figure it out. And that just felt, I'm the common denominator. I used to be a math teacher. I'm the common denominator here.
Yeah.
And so that just felt like my work. And actually, one of my favorite things to do anytime is when I'm triggered by something is to turn it toward myself. And that comes from Byron Katie's The Work. And it's just, okay, wait a second. This, I'm having a feeling about this. I think it's about that person, but what is it actually about me that's creating that trigger? And I think that's like where the like best answers of our life come from.
100%. I do the same thing when I feel like I notice myself getting angry. I notice myself get irritated or triggered, how you said, but I always pause and say, okay, I know that other people's actions and behaviors are not about me, they're about them. So, what is it that I want to feel? What is it that I am not feeling right now? And what is it that I need that I'm not getting? And then I love that you took it a step further and asked yourself, like, how did I show up in these relationships that taught them how to interact with me? Because really, when you think about it, every relationship you have is just a mirror of you. Your kids react in the way that you showed them to. Your spouse reacts in a way that you taught them to. And it may not even necessarily be their default response, but it is the one they learned with you. And the same goes for them. So I love that you were able to recognize that. What would you say to someone who struggles to recognize it in real time? What's an actionable step they can take when they're feeling triggered or isolated, or like the person that they're sitting with is not truly able to sit with them?
The first thing I would say is to give yourself grace for not being able to do things in real time because I think that's very hard to do. And sometimes we're already triggered, and it's not until we step back and are able to pause and ask ourselves questions and inquire. And I used to feel like what I wanted to do is never be defensive. I'm like, that's the goal. I'm just going to get rid of all my defense mechanisms and I'm never going to be defensive. And what I've learned over time is that it's more reasonable for me to close the gap between when I got defensive and when I'm able to pause. Because then if I show up that way, because it's just default and it goes back generations probably, it's okay for me to have had a reaction and then make an adjustment. So first give yourself grace. If you can't do it in real time, that's normal. And that's how many of us are. Try to shorten the time between catching yourself and getting to do that pause. I think it's totally okay in our relationships to say, gosh, especially as parents, we all know this. Hey, I want to do over on that. The first thing I did when I was grouchy or whatever, didn't have coffee this morning, was not the way I want to show up. So I want to apologize and have a do-over. So I think that's okay. Then I just think it's habit. Anytime that you find yourself triggered, and I loved what you had said in there. Everybody is responsible for their own stuff. Absolutely. I don't want anyone to take on another person's behavior as theirs, but I think there's always wisdom in an experience that we can pull out that's about us. So anytime I'm triggered, I always try to stop. If I can't in real time, because I'm not able, or it doesn't, I don't have time. I always go back later to ask, just inquire with myself, what was going on with you? The same questions that you ask yourself, like what need was not being met in that moment? How did I contribute to this situation? And the good news is you get to change it. If you've trained all these people to show up a certain way with you, like that's great news because then you get to do it differently. You get to teach them that it's okay for me to be feeling like a failure in front of you. I don't have to be fixed. And as an extension, as coaches, we know like it's very important for us to be able to sit in those moments with people also. So it's helpful in all parts of our lives.
I think something else that is super important is really practicing letting go of all the stories you're telling yourself in that moment. I think about other arguments that I've had with my husband or disagreements, whatever it may be. And before I even brought it up, the story in my mind was like, in fast forward, he's going to say this, he's going to feel this. I don't want to say this because he's going to react this way, and I'm going to feel this way. And it's like I was planning the demise of the entire situation before I even opened my mouth and said what was happening. And I had to notice, obviously, that's something I was doing, like catastrophizing before I even opened my mouth. But then also, because I had all those thoughts in my head, the way I approached it was like sharing all my information at one time, trying to prevent all the things that I thought were going to happen. But then what I didn't realize at the time was he also had stories in his mind of when Evelyn tells me all these things, then I know that she's going to feel this way and she's going to feel this way. And I have to filter my responses because I don't want her to feel X, Y, and Z. And it has come to a point in my marriage where I can just pause finally and say to him, this is something that's bothering me. These are the stories that have been going on in my mind. And I need you to hear me and know that there is zero judgment, zero criticism. This is how I feel. And I would like us to move forward together to work on the problem, not point fingers at each other. And I think just addressing things in that way, first of all, is such a relief to me because I'm not overtaken by what ifs. And it's such a relief to him because it's not like he's hearing I'm the problem. So I think there's that self reflection piece, there's the self awareness piece, and then there's also just the full awareness that we all have history. We all have lessons about how we learned to communicate or not communicate. We all, maybe a lot of us, have learned to suck it up, keep your feelings to yourself. It's better to keep the peace. Don't stir the pot. In a marriage, so many of us learned that it was better to stay together, regardless if that was happy or not. It was just a matter of being together. But I think this ability to pause just changes, not necessarily duration or anything like that. It changes the quality of the life that you get to choose to live every single day. But I would love for you to talk a little bit more about this piece that is self-forgiveness, because you said that you had a very just healthy, mostly healthy upbringing, nothing hugely traumatic. And I do think that we downplay what we feel because we think somebody else had it worse. What am I complaining about? So, can
Right.
you talk a little bit about recognizing maybe what you didn't get that you needed
Yeah.
and how self-forgiveness played a role in that?
I want to also just really quickly what you were saying about the stories. I think a really good inquiry when you are having a moment of trigger or activation is to ask yourself, or I like to start in my journal. The story I'm telling myself is, and then it'll come out. And one of the parts of my forgiveness process is actually dumping everything onto paper and then going back and looking to see what is a fact and what is a fiction? What is the stuff that I'm adding to what actually happened? Because it just takes the overwhelm out of an experience. And a lot of times it just helps you let go of half the pain right there because you were causing it. So, yeah, self-forgiveness. I think that we harm ourselves so often and don't realize it. And I think that when what I used to do, my operating system before I went through this experience was to internally shame myself. And especially for parenting, right? I would do something wrong. I would know later because I could feel inside that I wasn't happy with the way it turned out. I was disappointed in myself. And so I would adjust my behavior through the mechanism of internal shame. And so on the outside, it looks like I'm making adjustments, but on the inside, the mechanism for making those behavior adjustments is just terrible. It's so harmful. And when you have a strong level of shame in your system, you automatically put up walls because you don't want other people to see inside that darkness. So you have to hold people away because it feels worse to sit with someone and say, I'm feeling very ashamed about that. I can't even imagine those words crossing my lips years ago. But it is important to use the mechanism of forgiveness because that's not like it cleans up your internal area, but it feels warm and loving and allows you to remain open, but it really is true self-forgiveness, not again, not like that skipping over the top, like, okay, I fixed my behavior. It'll look different. No one will know because that doesn't really let go of those experiences. And we've all done things to other people. We've all done things to ourselves. It came up for me a lot in parenting because I wish that I had gone through this experience before I had kids. And then I got to just be so intentional and proactive. And parenting is so different now. And I feel like I had lost those years that I would have liked to have done them differently. But I now realize that's just the nature of parenting. You will always feel that you could show up better, wish you hadn't done things, and the only way to remain open in those relationships is to do self-forgiveness. And without self-forgiveness, I wasn't able to apologize because I think that you get into a situation when you don't use a lot of forgiveness and you use a lot of shame to just be like, don't look at this, don't look at this, I'm changing my behavior. Everything's okay out here. When a good acknowledgement for someone else that you screwed up is an apology and saying, let's look at this together. And if you haven't done self-forgiveness, when you're sitting there and the other person doesn't feel like they want to forgive you, that is the only way you can move forward. You can't be stuck to a moment in time because the other person won't bestow forgiveness on you. That's not what it's about. You have to be able to do it yourself.
I think it's so important too. You mentioned about the parenting and how we just wish that we could do things differently, better, whatever. But I think that's actually the beauty of it because we're not just raising children, we're raising future adults. And future adults need to be able to self-reflect and course correct. And when you make a big screw up as a parent, as you will, we all will, being present, taking ownership of it, apologizing, and correcting it is yes for you, but what a beautiful lesson for your children about making mistakes, about not being their best, and about taking ownership over changing the course of how to move forward. If that is not the goal of every one of our lives, right? Like we get to be the model of what it is to live, love yourself, make mistakes, forgive yourself, and then do better. So I think that if we did do all of our healing work ahead of time and show up that way for our children, I don't know that the lessons would be as beautiful. And I think if we ever started out parenting thinking, I've learned the best of what I need to know already, how do you keep moving forward and getting even closer if you're not in both parts of that relationship perpetually evolving?
Totally.
I think it's
No,
beautiful.
I think it's a one of the, I mean, it's so important to me, my ability to accept my own failures as a parent. Like that, my parents didn't do that. And that is not, that's just, I think that we're making a big generational shift. And I think it's so exciting that they parented by the default and their corrections they made because of their traumas. And then that's just being passed. And I think we're moving it. We keep moving the little closer to what I guess our ideal would be. But we are having to do things that weren't done for us. I was never apologized to by my parents. I wasn't even asked about my pain. Like, nobody, I didn't know. They didn't know to ask. I didn't know to expect anyone to show up for me emotionally. And so we get to do this differently. And that part is the most important thing to me is that my kids can come to me and say, hey, this hurt my feelings, or you really screwed this one up, or whatever. I want them to be able to not only disappoint, I think teaching your kids to be okay disappointing other people is one of the best skills you can give them. So I want them to be able to disappoint me and disappoint other people if it means they're in alignment with themselves. I want them to be able to bring those vulnerable things to me, and even though not everybody in their life is going to react with an acceptance and an apology, I think it's okay for them to expect that of people. I don't want them to don't hold yourself hostage waiting for it. But I do think if you know that you are in a thriving, healthy relationship, that is naturally going to happen. You're going to be able to bring things and have already processed your responsibility in that situation because they may have had one too. But you're going to be able to bring that to someone and they're going to be able to say, okay, I am truly sorry for that. What do we do next? Like repair, doing conflict, very important with repair. And I think that we have the opportunity to teach our kids how to do that. And that's probably the thing I'm the most grateful for is that I was able to course correct myself because of this experience and be able to be a more present parent in their painful moments, especially ones that were at my hand.
100%. And it feels terrible as a parent to have let your child down, but it also feels healing when they tell you this hurt me and you can own it and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I made you feel that way and I will do better. Like
Totally.
that feels so good to be able to say that.
And I don't think that people realize it's so interesting to me that well, I think we are notoriously terrible at apologizers. That's like a huge area everyone could move forward on. I think that people think that the worst thing ever is going to have to be to sit with someone and acknowledge that you screwed up and apologize. And if they just do it for a little while, they realize it is the most liberating feeling ever to be able to acknowledge your own responsibility in hurting someone and to apologize. Forgiveness, I think, is the path to emotional intimacy. Like it is the path. And if only people realized on the other side of that, there is such a liberation in your relationships for yourself, for the other person, I think people would do it a lot more than they do right now.
Let me ask you this. What do you say to the person who got vulnerable and said, when you did X, Y, and Z, Stacy, it made me feel this way, and I'm really hurt. And then I never get the apology. I never get the acknowledgement. How do I process what I went through, acknowledge that I did the right thing for myself in speaking on what I was feeling, and still am able to move forward knowing that the person is either not sorry or just not capable of apologizing?
The one of the most important things that you when we want an apology because we want the acknowledgement. We want the other person to know that we are hurt and that they are somewhat responsible for it. So what you have to do is you have to give that acknowledgement to yourself. You have to usually use words like, it makes perfect sense that I feel this way. Anybody in this situation would feel this way. Do very validating statements to yourself. And if you just do that for a little while, you will notice that it will help you get a little bit of that acknowledgement that you're looking for. The other thing I would say is forgiveness and boundaries are like a duo. If you've been hurt, that is signaling that a need wasn't met or a line was crossed. It can be a huge thing, it could be a small thing. It's giving us information. And so, in the process of forgiveness, you have to ask yourself, and I think about boundaries as you're drawing a circle of safety. And inside the circle are all the behaviors that support the relationship, support each other, are what we would consider okay, healthy. And then outside are all of the unacceptable behaviors, unacceptable things. And so boundaries are sometimes saying, when I come to you and I want to talk about my hurt feelings, I need some acknowledgement. I need you to say, I hear you. I need you to stay with me. If you are in a relationship with someone who cannot respect that need, then you have to evaluate because you can only do things, you can only change yourself. You have to evaluate what that means for you in this relationship. I am in huge favor of if my need can't be met here, then I need to find a place to meet this need somewhere else. If I can't build in this relationship, then I need to be building somewhere else. We cannot remain lonely because we just made some wrong choices with where to build. We get to every day make a new choice. And people who are in committed relationships with us, even if they're not there yet, will hear us and will acknowledge our boundaries and our needs, and they will move in that direction toward us. If they don't, to me, that's a big piece of information.
How do you, I know that you work with mostly women and really focusing on that relationship with self. And I'm sure that you must see those feelings of loneliness in marriages,
Oh, yeah.
in partnership, because when you think about truly the root of who we are and how we show up, regardless of our upbringing, regardless of our home life, women in general are taught that their value, first of all, comes in being chosen by another person. And their love is shown in everything that they do for others. So not only is it never about choosing themselves, it is about being chosen by someone else and then showing up for them, even at the cost of your own well being, right? But on the other side, men are taught that providing is what makes them valuable, and showing up and being strong and gaining power or making the money, right? There's very exterior value sources where they're not given permission to feel the things that they want to feel or that they naturally feel. So I know that I see a lot of in with my friends, even in my clients, this disconnect between women who have been growing in self-forgiveness, self-awareness, self-connection, intuition, and being partnered with someone who a lot of that feels foreign. How do you start to address a woman who feels very loved in her relationship, but not fully seen because her partner maybe doesn't fully see himself? How do you address that loneliness? And how does that look for that woman going forward?
Yeah, yeah. This is such a good question, and this is such a big issue in so many relationships. In good relationships, right? There are no problems, it seems healthy, they're having fun, but not only is the woman lonely, but men are so lonely. They don't have, this is sounds like a stereotype, and I don't mean it to. They often don't have language. They don't know to talk about it. They are starting from scratch. And so when a woman says, I'm lonely, they hear, I'm doing this wrong, but I don't have a solution for how. Like, I don't know what to do. And I think that you have to be very clear. Okay, first, try, right? Like, after many years of feeling lonely, you might have thrown in the towel. If this is an important relationship to you, especially if it's a marriage, try. And what do they tell us in business school? Like, you have to make 11 contacts with someone before they actually will buy or something. I think about it the same way. Don't give up after one attempt. It's okay to keep coming back and saying, I need this, but you have to be specific about what that looks like. Tell exactly. This means that I want to sit with you for a few minutes and I want to talk about my feelings. And your role is to listen, not solve my problem, and say, I hear you. I see you. Like, be very specific about what it looks like. I think a feel wheel is a critical thing to have in any, I probably have mine right here, in any house for any person, because some people, sorry, it's noisy, having a feel wheel, you can grab this at pretty much any of my links. It gives language for feelings. And that's like the very first step that women are generally better at because we talk to our friends, we have some more language. Not all of us. I had to teach myself that. But if you have that around, you can also start to inquire about how your spouse is feeling because he probably does not know actually like how he's feeling. So you have to start with language. You have to start by being very clear about roles. And if after you've asked several times and you've been very clear, and like you said, you've removed the stories you've been telling yourself about what that means about the other person, then you have to make some decisions about your relationship. If you're going to stay there, then you have to build this intimacy in your other relationships. You have to go lean other. We cannot do this all by ourselves. We have to be connected to people. It's so important. And if you're like, this marriage is a good marriage, I'm going to stay in this. I'm trying. It's not where we're not becoming more emotionally intimate. I have to build my emotional intimacy elsewhere. Or for some people, it becomes a deal breaker.
Mm.
It's not okay. But if the language is if the language if he can hear, I'm saying he, that's very whatever,
Yeah.
hetero, but I think that often you'll find that your partner is equally lonely, wants emotional intimacy also, and just you have to learn together.
Hmm. I think you made such a good point about them like starting from scratch because for us, it can be very frustrating and almost like you feel like he's not choosing. He's not choosing better for your relationship, but really it's that we were conditioned completely differently and our baseline is different. Our baseline is rooted in empathy for people near us. Our baseline is rooted in community and support and taking care of each other, where their baseline is really rooted in isolation, in being the breadwinner in going for what they need and what they want and what makes them feel good. It's like our upbringing was we centered and their upbringing was I centered. So even though they want this relationship, they don't even have a connection yet to what it means to elevate together. So it really is like you're at two different starting points. I could hear in my mind, I could hear while you were speaking about be clear and say what you need directly. Like first, I know that as women, we need to sit down and get real clear about what we want and need. Like it's hard to ask for something that you can't clarify for yourself. That's the first thing. But I could hear women saying, I don't want to do that. I
Yeah.
don't want to teach him how to show up for me. What would you say to that?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly that whole the emotional heavy lifting, right? We don't want to have to, we're all parents too, right? So we're already guiding and having to show up a little extra for people who are still in formation. It does feel like extra burden on us to have to explain what we want. And we can all walk away at that point if that's just, if we don't want to do it, that is totally okay. It's completely okay if you're like, I just can't, that's just too much, that's more to ask. But that's going to take you in one direction. And if it's truly the connection that you want to work on, and you're dealing with someone who's far behind you, if you think about all of the things that you put in place to grow yourself up to this point, they're not going to do that in a second. They need to have time to take their baby steps too. And it's a decision that we have to make. You know how it is. We can't just be like, here, go listen to this podcast, and then you're going to understand everything you need to do. That's that doesn't feel like a partnership. That feels like homework. They're like, oh, I have to go do that. We have to, it's about connection and staying connected. And just, this is terrible, but I know that I started as an emotional toddler and I had to teach myself how to understand my emotions. What even are they? And how do I talk about them? And then how do I make myself vulnerable enough to share them? And what do I even need? Do I even know what I need? Like, I started way back there, and that was a process for me. And if we want to be in a partnership with this person, it may be helping them along with that process, but you're allowed not to.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. I feel like the same way. And we talked before recording about growing up, I always felt very taken care of. My I felt very loved, but I also learned that to receive love, you had to earn it, you had to perform for it, you had to be a good girl, get the good grades, behave. I felt very loved, but I didn't feel seen. I felt very successful and right and just I was such an achiever that I didn't even recognize that I was completely emotionally disconnected because there was no space for emotion. There was surface level love. And I mean that in the love that I received and the love that I thought everyone just wanted was in the doing, in the
Mhm.
how do I show up? What do I have to do? Here's my job. Here's the money I make. Here's the house and the car. And I have the husband and the kids. And why do I feel disconnected when I checked every single box I thought I was supposed to check? So, yeah, it was for me the same thing, having to say, but why do I feel disconnected? Why do I have literally everything that I ever prayed for and still feel this sadness that I carry with me all the time? Why am I carrying this all the time? And then began the journey
Yeah.
from there. So I do feel like I can see in my husband that he wants that level of thought. He wants that level of connection. And he is slowly gaining the language, the awareness, the pause, and the permission, right? The permission to do the work. But really, a lot of it came from my approach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I love your response to you. It is a burden. It feels like a burden. It feels like another thing, but also you have choice. You always have choice. And for me, I guess I would look at it as if I ever felt like working on my marriage felt more like a betrayal of myself,
Yes.
then that's how I would decide.
Yes, absolutely. I am a big believer in don't ever turn away from yourself to turn toward a person. Like that's, don't do that. And the other thing that I thought of as you were saying that is it's a level of acceptance, right? The if you think about love and unconditional love and conditional love, there's acceptance underneath it, accepting the other person as they are. And when we come to somebody, anybody, and we say, I want more than this, it's very easy for that person to hear, I'm not good enough. You don't accept me as I am right now. I have to change in order to be loved by you. And so I do feel that if we can bring a level of acceptance where someone's at, even if it's not where, just like we do for ourselves. I can accept myself exactly as I am and still be wanting to hit goals or achieve things or things like that, but not in a I won't be okay until I do that. I already lived that life. I know where that got me. And so I think when we can come with a level of acceptance and a level of appreciation for what they're trying to bring, because in their mind, they don't want to hear I'm not good enough because it feels like I'm not providing what this person needs in this life. And that's a devastating thing for a spouse to feel.
Yeah.
And so the language we use, and not in a moment of frustration, that I want more than this, and you're doing fine, but we can go higher together. It's presentation too.
I think the thing that has helped me the most in my marriage is recognizing that I'm not defined by it anymore. In the Evelyn 15 years ago would have been devastated if anything ever happened in my marriage. And I look at it now and I say, I love my husband. That man is my favorite human being. And also, I love me too. There
Yes.
is Evelyn the wife, there is Evelyn with Armand, and Evelyn without Armand is still Evelyn. So to look at my marriage and say, I love this relationship, I want this relationship, but I will never sacrifice who I am to be in this relationship actually just feels grounding and comforting. And it makes me feel like I can approach any struggle, joy, whatever it is, from a place of knowing that whatever comes out of my mouth and whatever happens in the future will not destroy me because I am whole on my own and my marriage is a beautiful addition to who I am. So I think like it's that story that I released that my marriage was all of me instead
Mhm.
of I am whole and my marriage is beautiful because of that.
Yeah.
That was a long journey to get to this place. But I think it also gives release to my husband. It relieves him of the pressure of you're supposed to make me feel happy. You're supposed to be my everything. No, you're not. No, you're not.
But you're right, it's the choice. I do think of, and our egos get attached. I've been married for 31 years. I'm very proud of that, but I can't be too proud of that because it's actually a daily choice, right? Every day I have to get up and choose to love. And that's the filter that you have to put on when I'm I can feel the days that I woke up with, I'm irritated with you, because then everything is an irritation, irritation, irritation is the whole law of attraction, right? But if every day I wake up and I choose to love, then we're going to take our hits and we can deal with them when they come. But I start to see all of the things that you're doing that are wonderful in our lives and all of the ways you do show up and the ways you do try. We've all been in those seasons where you get in a funk and it's a lot of our own storyline about the other person.
100%. I think that there's that thought also that I think people believe they get married because they love someone and that's enough. That saying, love is all you need. No, it's not. No, it's not. There's love, the feeling, and then there's love in action. And those are two completely, totally different things. Stacy, I feel like I could just keep talking about this all day long.
I know.
Kept you long enough. I love the thought that I believe that you and I share the same thought that every relationship we have is impacted by our relationship with ourselves first. And that in really learning to see yourself and accept yourself and love yourself and forgive the past you for everything she didn't know, the better you're going to show up for everyone you want to show up for, including yourself.
100%. It always starts there. It has to.
Do you have any final words for our guests?
I think that we covered a lot of territory. So, yeah, I think we should end on just exactly what you were saying is be your own greatest love, be your own greatest liberator through forgiveness. Be with yourself first and foremost, and it'll impact all of your relationships and guide you, right, in all of your relationships when you don't know what to do next. Yeah.
I love that so much. Stacey, if anybody wanted to follow you on socials or reach out to you for coaching or buy your book, where could they find you?
You can find my book is Forgive Without an Apology, and you can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can Google search it and find wherever it is that you buy books. And there is going to, by the time this is airing, probably there will be an Audible up as well. And I read that, so that was a fun experience too. And you can find me on YouTube under Stacy Rocklein. That's where I'm most active. And I'm just getting started over on Substack, actually. So doing some writing over there.
I will make sure that everything is linked in the show notes. And before I let you go, I have to ask you the question of the hour. And the question of the hour is in the Minding Mind community, we are all about focusing on instinct, intuition, minding ours, living life aligned with who we are, what our calling is, who we feel we're supposed to be. How do you feel that living life in that way for you first impacts the legacy that you'll leave behind?
Mhm. The word vulnerability is what's coming up for me as you ask that question, because I know they say you can't love other people until you love yourself, but what I think my take on it is that in order to have a close connected relationship, you have to have vulnerability, and you cannot be vulnerable in front of someone else unless you can be vulnerable with yourself. You have to be able to say that hurt me, be able to say I hurt someone else, be able to confront your darkness, your shadow, and love yourself through all of that, accept yourself through all of that. And then you can show up in the ways that promote build of relationships. And it's the antidote to loneliness, really is that ability to be vulnerable in the right places with the right people, knowing your needs, being able to put in boundaries because you're very intimate with yourself first.
I love it so much. Beautiful. Thank you. I want to thank everyone for joining myself and Stacy. Stacy, thank you for sharing your heart with us today and tuning into another episode of Minding Mine. If this episode resonated with you, I want you to please comment, rate, and review the podcast. You know that your feedback helps me grow. And until next time, I want you to go live your life on your terms and mind your business. We will catch you in the next episode.